Hey, Cope here with 4.2 Step 1 Video 4.2 October. I'm really excited to introduce you to this poem. This is by Robert Frost, one of my favorite poets, and it's a great poem for us to start looking at form and structure. So to start off, when we read a poem, it's important that we do hear it out loud. And so I'm always going to suggest that you read the poem out loud, even if you're at the test. You can plug your ear and say it really quietly, not to bug other people, but it's really important to hear a poem. Poetry is meant to be heard. So I'm going to start by reading it. When we read poetry, we pause at punctuation. And so that's when we pause, not necessarily at a line break, although in this poem there is a mark of punctuation at the end of every line. As I read it, try to make sense of the poem, just your initial reading. I've got some words that are defined here. And so try to get a sort of a literal understanding. And then I'm going to give you a tip on how to make sure that you've understood the literal meaning of the poem, called SCASI. So here's the poem, October. Oh, hushed October morning mild, thy leaves have ripened to the fall. Tomorrow's wind, if it be wild, should waste them all. The crows above the forest call, tomorrow they may form and go. Oh, hushed October morning mild, begin the hours of this day slow. Make the days seem to us less brief. Hearts not averse to being beguiled, beguile us in the way you know. Release one leaf at break of day, at noon release another leaf, one from our trees, one far away. Retard the sun with gentle mist, enchant the land with amethyst. Slow, slow, for the grape's sake, if they were all, whose leaves already are burnt with frost, whose clustered fruit must else be lost, for the grape's sake, along the wall. So the words that are defined, thy means your leaves. This is actually an apostrophe, which is a poem that is has a speaker speaking to someone as if they are not an inanimate being, when in actuality they are an inanimate being. The speaker is speaking to October, and he says, your leaves have ripened to the fall. And he is listing all of these characteristics about October and really begging, pleading for October to slow time down. And in this part with these words of verse, beguile, retard, it would read, if we have the synonyms there, hearts not against being tricked, trick us in the way you know. Release one leaf at break of day, at noon release another leaf, one from our trees, one far away. Slow down the sun with gentle mist, enchant the land with purple. So slow down time, make the sunset, that purple color in the sky, last longer. We know this can't really be done, but we're not against being tricked, we humans. So trick us now, because we don't want winter to come. All right, so to make sure that we understand the literal meaning of a poem, I like to employ the technique called SCASI. And SCASI stands for setting first. And here's what we've got on setting. We know that it is an October morning from lines 1 and 7. Later noon is referenced. And then there's a figurative reference to the sunset in line 16. We know we're either in or near a forest. Trees are mentioned, leaves are falling in lines 12, 13, and 14. Grapes are growing along the wall in line 21 and are burnt with frost. So perhaps we are on a farm or an orchard. It seems to be an outdoor rural setting at any rate. C stands for character. And we always at least have one character in a poem, that being the speaker. And we need to use that term, the speaker, when we talk about that voice. It's not Frost necessarily, the poet. It is an entity that he has created, much like a novelist creates a narrator. So what do we know about the speaker? The speaker is asking October to slow down. The speaker doesn't want October to go, and he employs a lot of different techniques to try to convince October to slow down. A is action. What has happened so far? Well, the leaves have ripened, an interesting word choice there, right? Because we usually talk about fruit ripening. In this case, the leaves are turning color because they're actually getting ready to die. So the word choice of ripened is an interesting one. Crows are calling, leaves are falling, time is passing, the grape leaves are dying. These are all the different actions that are referenced. The key action, I think, in it is really the speaker's questioning of October and sometimes commanding of October to slow down. And then the speaker references all of these other things that are happening, which have to do with the change in season from summer to fall to winter. All right, well, what is the second S in SCASI? It is style. And what is the I? Ideas. This is where we actually have to spend the most time when we're doing a guided literary analysis. And for the first 4 lessons in this unit, I'd like you to focus on the elements of style that are form and structure. So once upon a time, I used the term DITS, which I will again use, stands for diction, imagery, tone, and structure. Structure is one of DITS. Style is DITS. Authorial choices is DITS. It's all the same thing, okay? But we're going to narrow it down. We're going to focus on just form and structure. So one thing that you'll want to look at when you're analyzing form and structure is rhyme scheme. And a rhyme scheme is delineated by the letters of the alphabet, and we label each line according to a letter of the alphabet based on what it rhymes with. So we start with the first line being A, always. If the second line rhymes with A, it would also be labeled A. In this case, fall does not rhyme with mild, so it's B. Wild, however, rhymes with mild, so it's A. So we label this rhyme scheme A, B, A, and then the fourth line, all, well, that rhymes with fall, so it can be B. So our first 4 lines are A, B, A, B. Now this is quite a regular rhyme scheme, a rhyming pattern. But then when you go to the next 12 lines, you'll notice that the rhyme is quite irregular. We go back to B, but then to a new rhyme, C, and then all the way back to A, back to C, D, A again, C, E, D, E, F, F. So this is a bit chaotic. It's irregular. There is not a clear pattern. And then when we move to the end of the poem, we see that there is another regular rhyme scheme, B, G, G, B. So if we're looking at that rhyme scheme and we want to try to go beyond the literal now and make some meaning, we have to start first with the literal and make a claim that is not debatable because it is true. It's unequivocal. And then we can start ascribing some meaning by looking at how to evaluate that pattern, look at the thoughts and feelings that are created, and then looking at how it creates ideas and themes. So let's start with, on the next page in your packet, the question of structure. What is interesting about the rhyme in the poem? Well, these are some possibilities. The rhyme scheme is regular in the first 4 lines and the last 4 lines, but irregular in the middle 12 lines. Then there's a couple other options there for you as well. The second question about the line lengths is interesting. This one has to do with how long or short the lines are. A poet chooses his line breaks. And so it is an important authorial choice to look at. And what you'll notice in this poem is that some lines are much shorter than other lines, specifically line number 4 and line number 17. Most lines are about 8 or 9 syllables in length. Line number 4 is 4 syllables in length, and line number 17 is only 2 syllables in length. And so that might be something that you could mention. Number 3 asks, what is interesting about the way the lines and sentences are constructed in the poem. Now, one thing that is interesting, and I mentioned this earlier when I talked about reading poetry out loud, all lines in the poem are end-stopped. End-stopped is the term we use when there's punctuation at the end of a line. This causes the poem to move more slowly because you must pause at punctuation. So since there's so much punctuation, it slows down the poem's speed. Number 4, how does rhyme and line structure mirror the content of the poem? Well, I'm actually going to start with the line structure here and say that the sentences are short, much like The Speaker Feels October is short, while the speed of the poem is long because of all of the punctuation marks, which is what the speaker would like October to do, slow down. So here I'm moving to evaluation. I'm looking at how this pattern affects the reader, and I'm looking specifically at how it connects to what it is about, content. Now, if we were to move to rhyme, I want you to finish this one. We could start with the rhyming pattern at the beginning and end of the poem mirror the content because, and then you finish that one. What do you think? What is similar between the rhyme scheme and what the poem is about? It's a great way for us to get to meaning when it comes to a formalist interpretation. I also want you to try number 5 on your own. How does Frost use structure and rhyme to make a point about a momentary stay from confusion? A momentary stay from confusion is a common theme in Frost's poems, and it's the idea that it's only through man-made structure that we humans can make sense of the world that is typically in a state of chaos and confusion. And so Frost believed that poetry was actually a way to add structure and meaning by creating a temporary pause from the chaos and confusion that is inevitable in the universe. So think about that as you work on 5 and 6, and I look forward to hearing what you come up with.